Welcome back to day 7 of Witchtober. So today I wanted to talk about how to write a spell or how to perform a spell. Because it's a bit of both. So you're kind of writing it, you're also kind of just like how to actually do it. So conveniently, I didn't actually plan this, but for day 7 for this one, there are exactly 7 steps. A+ on all of the 7s. If you don't know numerology, 7's often linked to spirituality, so woohoo. So the first step is to set your intention. Now, typically when I am working on my intention for a spell, I ask myself a few different questions, and these might be helpful for you as well. So the first question is, why are you wanting to cast a spell? Because a lot of times, especially for early witches, you know, first couple years, you might be really like spell heavy in your craft. And so you need to ask yourself, like, is it really necessary? Is a spell necessary to do this task? Like, a lot of times we tend to overdo it at the beginning. Like, if you have a headache, do you really need to do a spell for it? Or could you just go take some Tylenol? And kind of along that, is your goal of your spell realistic? And to be honest, this is one that it gets really complicated depending on where you go in the spiritual communities. If you go into what I kind of just call like the manifestation crowd, because it's a lot of like life coaches and really just millionaires that are just kind of scammy, that really push extremely unrealistic expectations out of what we would call magic and spells. Again, most of us are not going to be able to manifest through, again, a spell, like $1 million a year from your work. Most of us aren't going to be able to do that. That's unrealistic. And that's kind of another question I ask myself is, are you hoping for miracles or simply an extra bump towards something that is probable? The classic example being a job. If you are applying for a job, is it probable you're going to get it regardless? If so, your spell just gives you that little extra nudge to make sure that you'll get in the door. However, if you are applying, like if I went to apply to be like, I don't know, what would I apply for? Like, if I wanted to be in, going back to my old life, if I wanted to apply to be an ophthalmology tech, I would not be qualified. So that's reaching a little bit. So that's starting to leave the realm of probable because I don't have the legal training to do that job. However, working as a tech for an optometrist, you don't need training. You just show up and they kind of show you what to do. I know, Utah, careful with your eyeballs. Some places aren't trained for crap and you gotta really rely on just the doctor. But you could also really take it to a new level of like, you know, having your spell be a miracle would be like, overnight, my books, which I sell maybe 1 to 2 a month, are going to suddenly sell like 500 copies in a single day, and that's gonna keep going. That's a miracle. That, you know, it'd be cool if my spells would do that, but it's like the equivalent of like winning the lottery. It's a chance. It could happen. Is it probable though? No. The last thing for the intention setting part of your spell is a timeline. What is a realistic timeline to consider whether your spell has succeeded or failed? So a lot of witches will pick 3 months. Sometimes it's like, you know, if you're doing a job, obviously, like there's gonna be a deadline of they will reply yes or no within like a week or something like that. So get your timeline in order of when is the spell considered a success. Number 2 for considering for your spells is your method. What spell type are you doing? Are you doing a candle spell, food spell, or like a drink? Again, spells don't need to be huge. They can be small. Like I talked about, I think it was like the 2nd day in this series, is like my morning coffee. Like that would be considered a spell, but that's all I have to do for that one. But, you know, if I want to do a candle spell, obviously I'm going to need to get a candle. Am I going to carve into it? Am I going to dress it with an oil? Am I going to put herbs around it? Obviously, fire safety, be careful with that one. You know, what is your method? If you're going to do like a consumable of like, you're going to make like a batch of cookies or something to bring about like prosperity, you're going to need the ingredients for that. How are you planning to do your spell? What is the method in which you are going to take that intention and move it into a spell form? Next thing to consider is your timing. So if you're wanting to, you know, kind of utilize that part of magic, something I always recommend is like day of the week. A lot of witches use moon phase or season, like what, or even like if you want to get really specific, like the astrological hours of things, like what is the perfect timing to do this spell? For myself, I know that I need to not do spells at the traditional times of the full and the new moon because I feel like trash. I have no energy, my body's jacked up, I feel awful. Once it's past the full and new, I'm good. So like I know to look ahead and be like, am I gonna do a spell on this day? Maybe. And then it's like, oh no. And sure enough, by the like the next few hours, I'd be like, oh my god, yeah, no kidding. Cause like I have checked and I have not checked, and inevitably every time full or new moon comes around, I feel awful. My gut acts up, I get a pounding headache, moving into like almost a migraine where you're like light sensitive, you're nauseous, verging into vertigo, or sometimes you get vertigo. Like, it's not great. So I don't do spells during that time, so I'ma check it. But also I mostly will rely on days of the week for myself. So like if I wanted to do a money spell, I'm gonna do it on a Thursday, associated with the root chakra, but also Thursdays are often associated with wealth and prosperity and abundance. So like I would plan to be like, all right, on Thursday I'm gonna do this spell. Step 4 is to most basically write out what you're gonna do. This is really helpful to make sure that your steps are aligning to what you actually need to do. Because up till this point, you've kind of just been brainstorming. It's really good to commit it down to paper or write it down just somewhere, even on like your phone, just something, write it down so that you can make sure you're not gonna miss anything. And if you wanna have specific verbiage and make sure your verbiage is really good and really clear, it's ready and you can check it before you're doing your spell. So write it down. And even if you're planning to like free verse it and just speak from the heart, I still think it's a good idea to write down your steps to make sure you don't forget anything. 5, it's really easy. Gather your ingredients. Like just go get whatever you're needing for your spell. If it's a candle spell, obviously go get your colored candle of what you're wanting. You know, are you going to cast a circle with it? Get your supplies. Gather all the stuff you're gonna need. 6, do your spell, whatever it is. And again, these don't need to be complicated. You can have really simple spells. Again, my morning drink, like I will infuse, I don't need a lot, but I still have to get the ingredients, I still have to do the thing. So do your spell. And then lastly, step 7, I think is one of the most important parts of the whole thing. Write it down. Write down your experience with it, write down how you're feeling about it, write down how your ritual went. Did it go uninterrupted? Did you get interrupted a lot? Did you get distracted by the lovely sounds of construction shaking your house? Yeah, it's been great trying to be a witch right now. Like, just write down anything that happened and any thoughts that you have. If you found yourself constantly distracted during your spell, write that down so that you can reference it back later if it was successful or if it failed. You can go, oh, maybe it failed because literally every single step I was distracted because they were like, it felt like they were jackhammering the entire house, and then my dog was barking, and then I got a phone call, and then I was hungry, and that's all I could think about when I'm trying to visualize my outcome. I kind of kept thinking about like my leftovers in the fridge. Write down all of that stuff so that you can look back and be like, I'm surprised that worked, dang. Or, okay, yeah, it makes sense why it didn't work. You know, whatever, write it down so you can reference back to it. And those are my kind of major steps to doing a spell, to write up a spell. I would love to know what your steps are, if they're different, if you have other things, if you don't include some stuff, let me know in the comments down below. A huge thank you to my patrons. If you would like to support me and get access to exclusive content, it's patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I post every single day, and until next time, blessed be.